Hi there, hello and welcome. I'm Max Harper, here with Amadeo
Hey.
at Simmetri headquarters in Boston, Massachusetts, the United States. Today is day 24, I believe, of 30 Days of Simmetri, and today we're learning a simple little script that you should be able to do a ton of stuff with. And it's a kind of a continuation of yesterday, which was Summon the Sea, which was to kind of control the sea level. And today's is called Hey You, Go Over There. And this is just a script that kind of continues on this. Hey, let's select an item and store that as the selected item, and then let's animate a value. And yesterday we animated the sea level, and today we're going to animate a position value of the selected object. And this one's going to be a pretty simple tutorial. It'll be a lot less. It'll be less time than some of the tutorials in the past. Famous last words. We'll see how I do. And so you can see I'm clicking around here with my mouse cursor because there's an interact on press event here on the terrain, as well as on each of these objects. When I click either this tree, which is a model by Poly by Google, I think it's just called Tree. We'll look that up, and this is Sunflower, also by Poly by Google, found on Google Poly, which you can access or at least search into by pressing Shift-Control-P, and you'll get this little search box. And you can go search Google Poly. I just looked for a couple plants and then found these. So you can also find that under, I believe, under Learn. Whoops. Here, let me see. Learn. Isn't it in here? Is it under Edit Find? Edit Find. You can search Google Poly, and there's a lot of Creative Commons stuff there, and then freesound.org is another cool repository for cool sounds and stuff. So very simple. What's going on in this script is I am selecting an item, and then I'm selecting an object on the I'm selecting a position on the terrain, and this is going to work in VR with our lasers as well, with the interact capability on one of our lasers. And then I'm clicking this point on the ground, and then this object moves to that point, but it doesn't move to exactly that point. It actually preserves its offset in the Y dimension, and so it kind of moves smoothly along the ground here. And I select the tree and move it around. And there's going to be a lot that you're going to want to do, I think, after this, which is great because it's great to have this as kind of a first start. And the movement quality that they're doing is an exponential ease in kind of easing curve that I think is taking place over 2 seconds. So let's take a look real quickly at the scripts that are at play here, and then we'll build it up from scratch, and we'll go ahead and use these. We'll go ahead and use this same world since it's kind of these golden hills all ready for us. So basically, there's 3 places where scripts are living that all go together, so you're going to want to remember all these. Basically, there's an interactable attribute on each of your plants, which has an on-press event, which lives in this object script, which again you can always access by right-clicking and hitting Edit Code here. You can right-click and hit Edit Code here, hit Edit Code here. There's all these different ways. There's like 4 or 5 ways to get into this script, but it's all this object script living on the sunflower, and the same for the tree. So we've been working with this interactable attribute for almost all of the tutorials here in the 30 Days of Simmetri. So we've got this press event when I click on the sunflower, right? So when I click on the sunflower, all we're doing is going and getting a separate script that any items, if I were to put in a ton of different items into the space, they can all go and talk to this overarching global script. I'm going to show you that global script in a second. And so this press event is the same for this sunflower as it is for this tree. And if I hit Edit Code, you'll see it's basically identical. And we're literally going to, as I did, cut and paste from one into the other to create this. So what are they talking to? Well, they're talking to this global script that lives in our library. And when we right-click to hit Edit Code on that, you can see that it basically has a variable that's called selected. And when this script initializes, it runs this function, this on initialization, which is the first basically pre-frame of when you press play, it runs this script, and what it does is it sets a default, and we set this default to be our sunflower. That way, at least if we just we press play and we click the ground, it already has an item in the hopper. And so this is the primary thing. We're just sort of using this global script as a storage place to store this variable called selected. So it's basically going to be the global script dot selected, which in the context of this init function on the global script, it can declare that via self.selected. Cool. And then, like I said, there's 3 of these. The last one lives on the ground, and the terrain itself, not the terrain space, but the terrain itself. You can see there's a little pink indicator of a code icon here, and you can see an object script down here and an interactable attribute on the terrain. It's just under the ocean, literally and figuratively. And in the object script here, if I right-click to edit code, you'll see these basically 3 lines of code, 4 if you include this accessor of the global script. And so what this one does is it goes and reaches back to this global script, and it says, hey, who's your selected object right now? Because I want to go animate that position. And when by default, the first thing that's going to be is our sunflower. When we select the tree, then the tree goes and tells the global script, hey, I'm the selected. And then when you click the ground goes, hey, global script, who's your selected now? And it sends in the tree. And so this is another animation function. Yesterday you did, you just created a key clip. Today we're creating a specific type of key clip. So like I said yesterday, any property can be found as a can be created, can be animated, and the only difference is that those items that, if you're going to change the transform, you need to know create position key clip, you need to know create rotation key clip, and create scale key clip. And then what that does is we say we're going to create a specific type of key clip, which is a position key clip, and we're going to do that on an object. And we pass in the object that we're going to be animating the position on. And yesterday we had to create a key clip, and in it we passed in a property. And we passed in like not a property in the transform, excuse me, but like some property like dot, like the color property. So we said like bush get color property. So then our second line of code sets the key interpolator. In our case, I decided exponential ease in was a good one, and yesterday I showed you, and we'll show you again the list of these interpolators. And then this could be smooth or linear or bounce or whatever. There's like about 20 of them. And then the last one is where all the magic happens. We finally add our key. We say how long it should take and where we want it to go. And seg get endpoint is the end. It's the final point of the segment. When I click, with a laser in VR, it'll be that end point where the laser. You could think of like a laser pointer where the little red dot is that the cat is going to chase. That's the end point. And when it's my cursor, it's the point that where I click on the terrain. So it would be way up here on a hill or down here on the grass, and that's the end point, and that's a 3-dimensional value. And then we have to add to that a vector, and this is the basically the offset in the y direction. So we're saying, okay, if it's the sunflower, I want the sunflower to move to that point in space where the point is, but I also want to preserve how high it is off the ground. So add a vector that is 0 in the x, 0 in the y, and specifically the selected items world position dot y right there. So this is the preservation of the offset in the y. Well, there you go. 3 scripts that all kind of talk to one another. So on press of an object in the space, tells the global script to update who is selected. Then when I select the ground goes and talks to the global script and asks it who is selected, and then it tells it where to go and preserves that y position. So let's build this from scratch, and we'll go ahead yeah, let's just create terrain. I'm gonna I don't even need to save it. We've already saved this one, so I'm gonna just say new, and we'll build this from scratch. And we'll do just a little bit of terrain work, just to build a background. I'm gonna do a little bit of raising. This is the Bob Ross moment. Make some happy little mountains here in the background. I'm going to use some phthalo blue. I'm going to use the some green here. I'm going to use a little bit of irregularity, options enabled, a low amplitude so that I'm not varying too much. I'm going to keep it also slightly opaque, the equivalent of, or sorry, slightly translucent, the equivalent of terrain paint thinner, and kind of come. The valleys are often a little bit wetter and greener than the sides of hills, so I'm going to put a little bit of green here in the valley, even darken it right here in the center where our stage is. Great, and then I'm going to put a little yellow up the side. Yellow. Okay, we'll change the random seed and make sure we overlap a little bit. We'll get these background. Also, I like a slightly different time of day for these more cartoony looks. I like to change the time of day. I'll click in the sky, change the time of day, or excuse me, I'm going to change the time of year to be a little bit more towards summer, so it's a little brighter. Sometimes I'll even change the elevation to get a little darker sky. So yeah, so let's bring in these Google Poly objects, and the primary way to import, the kind of the best and simple way to import, is import optimized, and these don't have any particular saved names. We're just gonna grab them. So you could use pretty much anything, and I grabbed a tree. I guess this is called Bush, Poly by Google, and let's see here, and then we'll import optimize, and I think it's this one, yeah, sunflower, and there it is. Things will they will default to importing to the 000, the origin of your space. So you saw that it imported here. So if you're like looking for an object after you've imported it, it came in at the origin of your space. It may have some crazy offset baked into its geometry, so you may have to go find it. It very well might be microscopic and you have to scale it up, and it might be macroscopic and you have to zoom out to realize you're actually inside the object. So so anyway, with these objects we can kind of do whatever we want, kind of rotate them into position, and then scale them. I'm pressing R. W, E, and R will toggle you between position, W, E, rotate, R, scale. And I'm going to scale this one down a little bit. Great. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to create this kind of that central global script that's kind of the linkage between the press event of an object and the press event of the terrain. And the reason I'm doing that is because I kind of already know that I'm going to need it, and each one of these is going to need to access it. So I'm going to go ahead and create it. So I'm going to go to scripts, new global script. And you could rename this something that if you end up with multiple of these, you're going to want to probably name them. So I could go ahead and name this, and let's call this oh gosh, animation manager. I could just call it anim manager. That would be fine. And in here, I'm going to initialize an onInit event, an onInitialization event, and we can delete this stuff that's pre-populating it. This is kind of example stuff. It's called it writes it in here as an example global script. It's here to kind of teach you where you would how you're going to write your functions and declare variables inside of your global script. So it's just there as an example, but I'm going to delete it. When you create the onInit event, you'll see that it knows to call this this script by a name of global script. And so all we're going to do in our global script in our initialization function is we need to get a default object so that when we click the ground, there's something to perform that animation on off the bat. And so what we're going to do is bring our sunflower in to be our initially selected item. And so we select the sunflower, drag its icon. Oops, it's funny, I just duplicated it, which is fine. But grab its icon and drag that icon into the between the function and end inside the function here. So we've got sunflower, and it goes and gets its unique ID to go access it. And so now what I need to do is basically just say self, which is on the animation manager itself. So the global script dot selected is going to be some object, and the default is going to be sunflower. So I'm going to just double click sunflower to select it all, press Control C, press Control V. So I've got sunflower. So that's the first item. And now when we go and press these, we're going to go and update this value, which will be the global script's like dot selected value. All right, let's do that now. So this is all we need to do on a init, and then we're going to create a onPress event. So to do that, you need to come up to select the sunflower, and come up here to its top, do this add attribute, and you're adding the interactable attribute. We've been adding this all month here at 30 Days of Symmetry. On interactable, come over to the event of onPress, and onPress event, when we press this sunflower, we need to update the animation manager with its dot selected property. So when I drag this in, it's called animation. It's called anim manager. It brings it in by its official name, which is what we're going to call this thing in this context in the press event of our mesh entity, which is the sunflower. This sort of right here is the representation of the sunflower in this context. And the animation manager is the representation of this in this context. Always just worth remembering. Those more advanced already kind of understand that, but it's good to know, because what we need to do now is say anim manager dot selected equals self. So this item's selected variable now needs to change to from whatever it was to myself, which in the case of the sunflower, it's already defaulted, so right off the bat it wouldn't matter. But what we're going to do is quite literally take this exact script, we're going to copy it like I promised, and we're going to do that and paste it into the script over here. So we need to follow the same path. This is called bush. We're going to come over here, click this little triangle, circle button, and hit interactable, and then create an onPress event, and here we go. We're going to literally just paste it in, which means the same thing. Self in this context is the bush, but self in this context is the sunflower, and anim manager is the same global, we're accessing the same exact global thing because we're finding it by the unique ID. Great. So now when we press any one of these items, it's updating the animation manager up here. And let's just demonstrate it, just because I think that it's important to sometimes demonstrate ourselves halfway through. And I'll show you kind of how you can debug it. We're going to, not just an initialization script, but let's create an event that on every frame called onTick can tell us who has been picked. And what we're going to print is our self.selected colon get name. So the name of our selected item. And that's going to print every frame that we run. And we're just going to use this to kind of debug or to sort of guide ourselves along. So if we press play, it should be reading sunflower, and you'll see that written right here. And as soon as I click the bush, nailed it. We're looking at bush. Great. So you can see that it's working, right? You can see already that I'm not having any issues, and this would probably be the way you might build from scratch, just to kind of keep a sanity check running as you go. So we'll go back in and edit the code under the animation manager, and we can comment this out and maybe either delete it at some point or uncomment it if we want to like look and make sure that we're that everything's working right. You can imagine that if you were building up a game for a lot longer, that if you had many of these different objects and you've kind of gotten to all kinds of crazy states, that you'd still want to kind of just double check that at least your clicking and your selection update is working right. So I would just, that's a nice kind of housekeeping and good kind of scripting practice right there. Okay, so let's close the loop here. Here's the final step here. We need to create the press event on the terrain. So not on the terrain space, like I said. We need to go to the actual terrain, which is under the ocean here, and on it create an interactable attribute, and on it create an onPress event. So we're going to be pressing the terrain, and like on any onPress event, on any onPress event, we have this thing called seg. And like I said, as we were dissecting this earlier, seg is the point, is a line segment that runs from the camera to the mouse cursor, or from the laser handle / like the beginning at your controller to the like laser tip. So the seg get endpoint is where the click takes place, and the seg get start point. Seg get endpoint and seg get start point. Start point is essentially the center of the camera in the 2D scenario like we are here, and it's the beginning of the laser nearest your hand in the VR situation. So this is what we're going to be working with. This is the place where we're going to tell our thing to go to, and we're going to do it in an animation fashion. So the first thing that we want to do is we're gonna start defining a clip, and this is your animation. The first thing is to create a clip that we're going to then add. This is the equivalent of adding a little blip of like a keyframe here when you've animated, and you've learned that under Intro to Basics, keyframing with the timeline. So it's basically what we're going to do by script is the equivalent of putting in a little keyframe and putting it in dynamically, quite literally. Like, okay, as soon as we run the script, hey, in 2 seconds from now, I want you to go from where you are now to some other place that I'm going to give you. And I want you to do it using this interpolator. So that's what we're setting up right now. So what we're going to do is say clip equals, and we have to get this little access a few things in Symmetry here. So we say get animator, open close parentheses, and then we say colon, create position key clip, because this is specifically a position key clip, and this is different than the summoning the sea yesterday. So position key clip. Who do we want to create that position key clip on? Oh, well, we needed to create it on the globally selected item, that item that lives on our global script. Ah, great. So we need to bring in our animation manager, like so, access it again. So this is kind of that, you can kind of picture that this is the wire. We're wiring the animation manager now to the terrain in this way. So animation manager now, we need to get the dot selected. Give me the animation manager dot selected, whoever that object is. Great. So we're going to create a position key clip for the anim manager dot selected. Perfect. And we already saw it printing. We know exactly that it's updating. So perfect. Now we have to run a function on clip, which means we go clip colon add key, and the add key takes in a time value and then a position value. And so I'm going to do this wrong, and then you're going to see how I improve it from there. So first we're just going to say seconds 2, and this is fine. Whatever you want here. And this, like I showed yesterday, could be like a total. You could figure out a way to change how long it takes based on how far it is from its last position and stuff like that. But we're just going to go with a single variable here and leave you to find out fun ways to change what that is. But right now we're going to work with 2 seconds. What is the place that I clicked? So that's the seg colon get end point, and that's the point that I've clicked. So if I were to press play now and I click the terrain, you'll actually see the terrain's on press event, which is happening here, glow pink. As I do it, you can see that first of all, it's moving very mechanically. You can see that kind of like linear interpolation, so it moves pretty like it doesn't speed up or slow down or anything, so I don't like that. I'm going to put in the key interpolator. And the second thing is, obviously, it like buries itself because it's like center of the tree, what's called the pivot. The center of this mesh is considered at the center kind of this geometry. You can see kind of where this rotates. That's its pivot. In our case, it's midway up the item. And yes, you could put the pivot at the bottom, but we're going to do something that kind of preserves its offset. This could be fine if you like what it's doing right now. That's fine, but I'm going to preserve its Y position. We're going to do this. We're going to do this way, and then we'll also see another way to do this. So the first way we're going to do it is add this offset. So what is the offset? The offset is this item's position, its current position. So it's get world position dot Y. So what we're going to do is add to our endpoint a little bit in the upwards direction. How much in the upwards direction? Specifically, the amount of how high this item is off the ground. Let's take a look. This item actually is quite literally 0.5742 off the ground. This tree is 0.8582 off the ground. So that's the number we want to add in instead of, burying this thing. Oops. So yeah. So how do we get that? So what we're going to do is say we're going to add a vector 3 because you need to add 2 vectors. You can't just add a y value to a vector 3. So you need to make this a vector. And we're going to say nothing in the x-axis and nothing in the z-axis. And right here in the y, we need to get that different value. So we're going to say animation managers selected. So that's going to be whichever item has been selected. And we're going to say it's their get world position, open close parenthesis, dot y. Let me open this up so you can see better. So in 2 seconds, go from where we are, it's inherent here, you don't see it, but where we are, where this object is, where that object is, to my endpoint plus another little vector, which is specifically going in the up direction by how much, our selected items get world position dot y. So wherever it is currently, preserve that. And let's take a look at how that looks. We can actually just play it right now. Great, and you can see it's just sliding along nicely. And let's change that interpolation. So it's right now it's like very it defaults to smooth, right? Yeah, so it defaults to smooth, which is okay. But I want to set that differently. So I'm going to actually say clip, colon, and then set, which is lowercase s, and then k, uppercase key, uppercase I, interpolator. Set key interpolator, and this needs a string, so it needs in quotes. And this is first caps. I'm going to say exponential ease in. And I can actually, if I F1 over set key interpolator, I get the symmetry reference where you can see the key interpolator, and these are the key interpolations. And I chose exponential ease in. And so these are the values, these are the parameters it'll take in. So exponential ease in is going to change the way that this interpolates, and you'll see how it kind of whips over there and then comes in slow, and I kind of like that. So that's pretty cool. And let's take a look. Like I promised, this will work. This interaction system is designed to work both with your mouse and in VR. So let's drop in a preset rig in VR. And you'll see that it's going to be looking, its first view is going to be looking directly at these items, which is useful. And then we're going to go into VR mode. This should be Oculus today. And I'm going to now press VR down here. And yeah, you're seeing stereoscopic. That's fine for now. And when I interact with the ground, when I interact with the ground, by default, because we set up our default to be this sunflower kind of comes with me, goes where I place it. It moves around really nicely, and it's kind of great to see the sun kind of glint off of it. And then when I select the tree, all of a sudden I get to control the tree, which is pretty fun too. So this is great. So this is the basic kind of first step, and you could